name string. For the IT, it has ID annotation, okay, which tells the Spring that this is the primary key in the table, and we need to identify the generation of this ID, the generation strategy. For the rest of the class properties, we'll use column notation, and if there's a difference between the property name and the column in the table itself, we should specify that name here. And because I'm lazy, I will take it copy paste here, there, yeah. So this is last name, and this is date birth, and that one is enrollment date. Okay, one more thing, we will use Lombok annotation for generating the getter and setters, and the all args constructor for creating a constructor that takes each single class property as a parameter and assign them to these parameters one by one, or these properties one by one. So now it's okay. Now we will create our repository, new interface, we'll name it student, and this interface will extend the CRUD repository from Spring JPA, and it's a generic interface. It needs our entity as a parameter here, and this is the data type of the primary key, which is in our case integer. Yeah, and we good. Yes, we forgot to create one more package for services here, and here we'll say new class, and let's name student service. Definitely we need to annotate this class with service annotation in order to Spring Boot while the initialization phase. It will create a bean from this student service, and it will inject it in its Spring application context. And here we implement a method public, and that method, it will return a list of students. We'll name it get all students. Okay, and definitely, yeah, forgot the import here, and definitely we need to define student repository and auto-wire it. Yes. Here we will call the find all method, which will get all the students from our table. And and the result will be a list of students. Yes, and let's return it. Now our service is ready, the repository is ready. It's time for creating the controller. We'll name controller student controller, and we will annotate it with REST controller. Here we need a method that will return the list of students, and let's name it all, and we should annotate this method with get mapping, and the path is students. Okay, now we should auto wire an instance of student service, and we will use that instance for selecting or fetching all the students. And let's return them. Okay, now the magical part. How can we tell our code to connect to the database depending on the environment? I mean, now database in the development server, maybe it has its own name, maybe it has a different port than the database in production server or staging server, or maybe the IP is different, maybe each database in a different server. So yeah, here how can we do it? We go there and we will create a file. We'll name it application-def.properties, and we'll create a new one for production environment. Okay, this is the right place to tell the specific configuration for the development environment. For example, now we need to connect to our database in the development environment. So spring.data source.url. Well, I will connect it to a Postgres database, so I need to write the correct URL. For the Postgres database, and 5432 this is the port, and name, my database name in the development server is devdb. However, in the production server it's different, the database name is different, and maybe the port is different. And here let's write the username of our data source, which is in my case Postgres, and the last thing is the password, which is admin. Yeah, I will take all of these, copy, paste, and okay, in my production environment the database name is different. So here I will write ProdDB. This is the name of my database in production, and everything else is the same. In the real life, the database, the server IP should be different, but in my machine I have both databases in localhost. I have devdb and I have ProdDB. Both are in my localhost server. Okay, now as we created two different properties file, def and prod, how can we tell our application what is the active profile? Now you are in the development phase, so you need to depend on this configuration for the development environment. After a while, when you're done development, you need to activate the production. So here is how can we do it. We'll write spring dot profile dot active def, and let's start our application. Okay, our application started, as you can see, and here is the magic. The following one profile is active, dev. Now our application will depend on the dev configuration. If you see, if I change it to production, and let's start our application again, let's change it. Now the active profile is prod. This word dev or prod. So our application will connect to the production database based on this configuration, which is defined in that application dashboard.properties file. So again, let's activate the dev and let's see. I want to show you the different data between our database has only one table, and that table has one record. Yeah, if you see, I am in the dev.db and here is Jack Smith. Jack Smith is the only student that is enrolled in our dev database. If I try to select from the same table but in the production, it will not be Jack Smith, he will be John Doe. So let's see. Our application stopped, so let's start it, and the active profile is def. Okay, one thing I forgot to implement, we need no args constructor, and we don't need all args constructor, only a constructor that takes no parameter is enough. And let's start. Again, the active profile is def, so now we are connecting to the def database, and And here is the magic. If you can see, this is now our data has been returned from the development database, and here is Jack Smith. Okay, now if I stop my application and I changed the active profile to production, let's start it again. And here is the active profile is production. And let's refresh, request again the same resource, and voila, it's John Doe. So this is how can you implement the profiling in Spring. And yes, and that's it. Let's see what is the second way we can implement the Spring profile. Here you saw that we created two different development and production, two different properties file, and this is the correct way to do so, but we can do it differently. Now I want to show you how can you do a Spring or a bean specific for each profile. Yes, here I will create a class. Let's say it's a student config. I will name it as student config, and I will annotate configuration, not configurable, configuration, yes. And after creating our student config, we will define two data source. Driver manager data source, and let's assign the data source properties. Yeah, and we can copy paste. No, from development, let's copy it and paste here. And the username. And the password. The password is admin. The username is Postgres. And we will return that data source. At bean, and this annotation will tell the Spring to instantiate an instance from data source using this method, and this configuration file will only work if the profile is developed. Yes, so we used add profile annotation in order to tell Spring that this class is responsible for creating data source bean while development profile. I can do one more data source for production. Let's say this is development data source, and here production data source. And this annotation can work on the class level or the method level, so I can do like this here, production, and yeah, and here I will write the production database name, which is prod DB. I can do like this. So in that case, I am no longer need these properties files, so I can delete them. And again, here is how I can tell the Spring put what is the active profile. So I will write dev, and let's see. Again, this is not the best practice to set all the configuration inside one configuration class. We need to separate them. So one of the best practice when you are trying to implement Spring profile, if you are going to implement them that way, so you need to separate the environment configuration in a different configuration class. So yeah, again, now this is the active profile now is diff, and let's see. Jack Smith, yeah, it works fine. And if I change it, if I change the active profile here to prod, it will work perfectly. Let's run the application again. It should not be Jandu. So now we are connecting to the production database. So I told you now two ways to implement Spring profile. One is creating two different application.properties file, each one for a specific environment, and the second way is programmatically. This is how can you do it. So the correct way, or the best practice, let's rename this class to dev student configuration, and we will leave only the dev configuration, and I can create one more class for production student config. Yeah, and here is our bean and the configuration annotation. Yes, so now I have this class for production environment configuration and a separate class for the development, and it will work perfectly. Let's run our application. The active profile is prod, and John Doe. It's perfect.
I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you have learned something new today and interesting. If you would like to see more videos, please subscribe to my channel and press the like button. Thank you.